All right, let's dive right into a wild idea. What if ghosts weren't supernatural at all? What if they were quantum? Today, we're exploring a pretty radical new scientific theory that tries to pull paranormal phenomena out of spooky stories and into the strange, weird world of quantum mechanics. And that's really the central question here, isn't it? What if all those things that go bump in the night aren't actually breaking the laws of physics, but are a direct consequence of them? This isn't just some fun thought experiment. It's a serious theory that's built on one of the most fundamental rules of the entire quantum universe. And that rule is called quantum unitarity. It's a bedrock principle, and it basically says that in the quantum realm, information can't be created or destroyed. It can change shape, it can move around, but it never, ever just vanishes. Now think about that for a second. If our consciousness, our very identity, is a form of information, then according to this rule, after we die, that information has to go somewhere. So, Section 1, Science of the Supernatural. Let's look at how science is trying to build a quantum framework for the brain itself. It really kicks off with a theory called orchestrated objective reduction, or OR for short. Now, this model suggests that our consciousness isn't just a simple byproduct of electrical signals zapping between neurons. No, it proposes something much deeper, that consciousness is an actual quantum process happening inside these teeny tiny structures in our brain cells called microtubules. This is the crucial first step, seeing consciousness not as something magical, but as a physical quantum thing. On to Section 2, the ghost in the neuron. Okay, so if consciousness is quantum information humming away inside our neurons, the next question is, well, it's pretty unavoidable, right? What happens to all that information when the brain shuts down? And this is where the theory makes its most shocking claim. This quote here from one of the papers suggests that what we call spirit communication might actually be a living person's quantum consciousness interacting with the leftover, persistent quantum information of someone who has passed away. So you're not talking to a ghost in the traditional sense, you're interacting with a kind of cosmic data pattern. So for Section 3, we're looking at Mylan's quantum engine. I mean, that's a wild theory, but is there any biological mechanism that could possibly make it work? Well, a recent paper points to a specific engine in our brains that might be capable of pulling off these quantum effects. And that proposed engine is the myelin sheath. Now, you probably learned about myelin in biology class. It's the fatty insulation around our nerves that helps signals travel fast. But this new research imagines it as something more. Not just an insulator, but a perfect little quantum cavity. A biological structure literally designed to generate entangled photons. So how does it do it? Through a process called cascade radiation. It sounds complicated, but here's the gist. First, certain chemical bonds in the myelin get excited with energy. As they start to relax, they spit out a photon. Then, to get all the way back to the relaxed state, they have to spit out a second photon. And because these two photons are born from the exact same event, they are forever linked. They're an entangled pair. And get this, the research gets incredibly specific. The models predict that this whole quantum process works best when the myelin sheath is between 0.8 and 1.1 micrometers thick. This isn't just some vague philosophical idea. It's a specific, measurable, and falsifiable prediction. So what's the big deal here? It suggests there's a real, concrete biological mechanism for the living brain to actively generate electromagnetic fields through purely quantum effects. If this is right, it's not magic or superstition. It's just quantum biology doing its thing. Okay, Section 4, Explaining the Unexplained. We have a potential quantum engine in the brain. Now let's try to connect it all the way back to where we started. How could this possibly explain a haunting? Let's start with a classic, EMF spikes. You've seen it on every ghost hunting show. The supernatural view says that's spirit energy. But the quantum view, it suggests that the persistent quantum information, the ghost, if you will, is just disturbing the local electromagnetic field, creating the exact kind of strange readings that investigators are looking for. What about EVPs, those creepy voices that appear on audio recorders? The quantum theory suggests that the field from that lingering consciousness information could oscillate in just the right way to create a resonance in the electronic circuits of a recording device, basically turning random static into something that sounds like words. And then there's the big one, actually seeing an apparition.
The theory isn't saying a solid body is forming out of thin air. Instead, it proposes that a powerful quantum consciousness field could temporarily change the properties of particles that are already in the air, little bits of dust, water vapor, making them clump together or reflect light in a way that creates a visible but very temporary shape.
This framework might also explain why some people claim to be more psychic or sensitive than others. It might just come down to biology. Maybe small variations in how efficient their myelin sheaths are at this quantum process makes them better receivers for these fields. We see it in nature all the time. Some birds are way better at using quantum effects to navigate. So why not people too?
And why are some places considered more haunted than others? Well, the theory proposes that locations with a history of intense emotion or trauma could create stronger, more stable patterns of quantum entanglement, leaving behind a kind of residual quantum imprint on the environment itself.
So now for our final section, rethinking consciousness. Because all of this, if it's even partially true, forces us to step way back and ask what consciousness really is and what its place is in this quantum universe. So here's the ultimate takeaway. If this theory has any legs, it reframes everything. These things we call paranormal would suddenly stop being supernatural. Instead, they might be the very first, observable, albeit very strange evidence that consciousness is a persistent quantum system, one that can still interact with our world long after the body is gone. And that leaves us with one final, absolutely mind-bending question. If your consciousness does persist after death, not as a soul or a spirit, but as a complex web of quantum information entangled with the fabric of the universe, is that data still you? In a quantum reality like that, what does identity even mean?